Hello, everyone. This is Execute with Joe Leun. This is a podcast where we're going to help you stop floating towards your goals and start executing towards your goals. And what we do here is, we're going to help you through strategies, through mindset, tips, and extra insights. We're going to talk to people, break down their stories, and really, you're going to get practical takeaways to apply to your life. And without further ado, I'm super excited to have this guy on. Marlon, I've been following you for years now. I'm glad we can you're a busy man. I know that. And I respect you for coming on here. I really appreciate that. So Marlon, thanks for coming on.
Yo, Joe, thank you for having me, bro. I am excited about this. I follow you on social media. Dude, I've been loving watching your journey, how you've been taking action. You've been sharing gems as you're closing deals, you're showing different people. You're out there educating everyone on how to do the real estate business. You're educating people on entrepreneurship and you're showing people that it's real. So I appreciate you for that and I commend you for that because that's the sort of content that needs to be out on social media way more often.
Well, Marlon, I think the first time I came into contact with you was I had a buddy, Anthony, who met you at some meetup. I want to say, where were you having your meetups in Nassau? Wait,
Yeah, we were probably it's so funny. I was just talking about
at the
this.
park? Yeah,
Yeah, I was just telling some people the other day. I was like, guys, you all need to be hosting like meetups, and they're like, but like I don't have a place to take them. I was like, guys, I used to take people out into a park field at Eisenhower Park on Long Island, and I would
yeah,
just gather people, anyone who was interested in learning about real estate or personal development or finance. Like, let's just go meet anywhere. And we would actually on those days, I would take people out door knocking. Like, I would literally just
yeah.
take a bunch of people who they didn't even know what they were signing up for. I'm just like, all right, cool. We're gonna go knock on strangers' doors now and see who's
Yeah.
interested in selling a house.
Insane. Like, so you would just have people coming, you would teach them how to wholesale, teach them how to speak to sellers, how to get cursed out at the front door. And that's what I remember. And I remember my buddy's like, yeah, this guy's wholesaling and he's doing it. And it all didn't really, I didn't understand wholesaling fully from a point of view of someone who's actually done it. So I was still a little newer, and I remember reaching out to you, and I had a specific thing. I was trying to deal with a seller, and you just broke it down for me very plainly. You hopped on a call with me. It was awesome. I don't know if you even remember that, but that was from day one, Marlon. Authentic is what I get from you, and I really do appreciate that.
Bro, I do appreciate that, man. And like that means a lot to me because ultimately my goal whenever I do things like that, it's to give back because in this journey of entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to go it alone. And
Yeah,
oftentimes we have a mentality in our minds of like, all right, I got to be the one. I've got to figure it all out. I got to do it all on my own. This is a team sport.
yeah,
Entrepreneurship is a team sport. So with that being the case, I've only been able to achieve anything in my endeavors by other people reaching out and helping me, by people pulling me up, people taking time to give me advice, to give me guidance. So anytime I
yeah,
get the opportunity now to share, I like to give it forward because one of the very first people, and shout out to Kirk. Kirk was one of the first guys that ever sat down with me. It's so funny, I can't even remember Kirk's last name. I hang out with him every time I'm back in New York. He
yeah,
sat down with me and poured into me for hours, like about 2 or 3 hours. He let me take him out to lunch. He just poured knowledge into me when I was getting started. Totally green. I'm asking him
yeah,
questions. I got my notebook. I'm just going at it. And at the end of it, I say, Kirk, this was so valuable. I mean, like extremely valuable. I don't think you understand. Like, I would have paid you $10,000 for today's knowledge. What can I do for you? How can I pay it forward? And he said this, and it stuck with me. He said, simple. Don't let this have been a waste of my time, and just pay it forward to the next guy. Done.
yeah.
Those words have stayed with me all these years.
Yeah. Now, Marlon, before we get too into it, I want to, for people who don't know you, right? Just bring us up to speed with who you are. What are you doing right now? Talk to me.
Yep, great question. So, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Marlon Johnson. I'm originally born out of New York, Long Island, and I am currently a entrepreneur, real estate investor. To be more specific, I buy and sell houses. I fix and flip. I hold rental properties. I wholesale now on occasion, so it's a strategy I still use. I leverage almost every real estate strategy in the book, except for I haven't done innovation yet.
Hmm.
And outside of my real estate, I do high performance coaching with entrepreneurs. So I am one of the people that am obsessed with personal development. Like I have like
Yeah.
a crazy obsession with personal development, and I've been studying that field for the last 10 years. And now I'm in a position where I get to help other entrepreneurs, typically entrepreneurs who haven't broken past that six-figure mark, who've maybe made a little bit, they've broken past the five-figure mark, but not the six-figure mark yet. I like
Yeah.
to sit down with them and I work with them on unlocking the mindset and creating clarity in their business, their vision, their goals, and what they need to do to get to that next stage.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about what I'm doing, at least professionally.
Yeah. Now, Marlon, prior to all that, though, right? Before you were obsessed with personal development, right? When when did you first veer off, like, the common road? When did you first start going to the road less traveled? When did you first go down that path? Maybe it was a book, maybe it was a YouTube video, a buddy. Take us there.
Yeah. So, I found out I was broken back in I want to say like early 2019. What
Hmm.
was happening was, like I said, I lived in New York. I was working three jobs because everybody in New York has multiple jobs. No one works just one. And
Yeah.
like, picture this. I'm standing in an Elks Lodge one night about 1 o'clock in the morning. For anyone that doesn't know what an Elks Lodge is, it's a catering hall, like a Knights of Columbus. So it's a catering hall I had been working at since I was 13 years old. Maybe about 23 at this time, somewhere around there, my early 20s. I'm standing in this Elks Lodge. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's a Friday night, and I've just tossed the mop down on the ground because like I'm pissed off. Like I'm really pissed
Yeah.
off because I don't know if you ever had this moment of realization where you're looking around and you're seeing like this is my life and my life kind of
Yeah.
sucks. And I'm just like standing there in this feeling by myself, just realizing my life sucks. And
Yeah.
I did this thing for the first time that I had never done before, which is I call it the rocking chair experiment now. I closed my eyes and I projected myself into my 90-year-old body. I saw
Yeah.
myself as a 90-year-old man sitting on the porch, rocking back and forth in the chair. And from that vantage point, I reflected on the life I lived, Joe. I
Hmm.
saw it all. I finished going to school. I went and I got the doctorates in physical therapy. I got the job as a physical therapist. I had a house in the suburbs that had the little white picket fence, the two kids, the stupid dog that kind of barked a little bit too much, but the
Yeah.
kids loved it, so I had to keep it. Like I saw the whole life. And it
Yeah.
wasn't a bad life, but Joe, the problem was that life did not excite me at all. It felt like the most settled life. Even like in that vision of looking backwards, like the woman I was married to, I can even feel it. I'm like, this marriage isn't even full of love. It's just
Yeah.
everything is just happening. It's just everything is just okay.
Yeah.
And I did not like that feeling. And so still, as I'm like there as this 90-year-old man, I'm feeling regret, just a lot of regret. And
Yeah.
so then I ask myself, like, what's this all about? And he's just like, I wish I would have done something else. I wish I would have gone for it.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, standing in that catering hall, I opened my eyes and I quit my job right there on the spot. Like no
Really?
one was around,
Really?
so there was no one to actually, yeah, there was no one to actually quit to. So when I quit, it was more like the internal quitting. So I actually had to come back the next morning and quit again for the second time. But I just knew that this wasn't it. And
Hmm.
interestingly enough, I wish I could tell people like I immediately discovered real estate was going to be the thing, and then like high performance coaching was going to be the
Yeah.
thing, and I'd make money there. But all I knew with certainty was the path I was on wasn't the right path. And maybe someone
Yeah.
listening can relate to that. Maybe they're like, I don't know what I need to be doing next. I just know that it's not this. I just know that this does not feel right. So
Yeah.
that's ultimately was the moment, like that was the straw that broke the camel's back that I'm most
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah. Okay. So you said, screw this. I'm done with this. I've been taking this for far too long. And So from there, what did you start doing next? Did you get a different job? What were you doing?
Yeah, man. So from that standpoint, it was pretty interesting. I started looking for options, and a lot of people don't know this about my journey. I didn't jump into real estate next. I started searching. So like anybody else, I'm on YouTube. I'm looking for, how
Yeah.
to get rich, how to make money because I was making back then like a grand whopping $20,000, maybe like $24,000 a year. I'm talking like
Yeah.
I was broke. I was
And
living
you were
at home with my
busting your
mom.
ass.
Busting my ass. And like that's
Yeah.
working three jobs. I worked in the catering hall. I was a parkour coach, which I absolutely loved doing. It just didn't pay the bills. And I would clean auto zones at night. I would go in with like industrial cleaners and be like cleaning and scrubbing AutoZone floors at night with my uncle's friend. So
Insane.
just a lot of backbreaking work. Afterwards, I'm searching. My girlfriend at the time, she had discovered a course for trading stocks and options, and she had signed up for like this weekend seminar. And like I'd never gone to even like a weekend seminar before. And
Yeah.
she goes to it, she's telling me like, hey, like I learned how to do this thing and it's pretty cool. You should look into it. Like you should start maybe doing it. So she starts sharing her login with me and I'm going through the material. And I actually started to work on learning how to trade stocks and options. And I was doing that for a good while.
Really?
Actually, paper trading, learning how to make money with that. It was kind of fun. I mean, everything's fun when it's new and exciting. And
Yeah.
I actually almost got pulled fully into that world, but I was still working my job as a parkour coach. And in
Okay.
the summer times, I would go away to Woodward, Pennsylvania, which is the middle of
Mhm.
Amish country, and I would train at a camp and I would coach at a camp for 3 months. And the
Okay.
challenge with that place, Joe, there was no Wi-Fi and there was no cell phone service out there. So it's kind of hard to trade stocks when you're not connected to the internet. So
Yeah.
being out and away for 3 months, when I came back, I had broken my rhythm.
Yeah.
Momentum and rhythm and consistency are such a major player in success. So I
Yeah.
had broken that rhythm. So when I came back home, I wasn't feeling like getting back into stocks anymore. And it started the journey fresh again. And that's where later on I discovered real estate again by another seminar. Again, my girlfriend, she was the one that shout out to her. She changed my life. She was the one
Yeah.
that was like, hey, because I went back to YouTube and I came across a gentleman. Some people might have heard of him, Max Maxwell,
Yeah.
and he was talking about wholesaling online. And I'm a YouTube kid, so I learned a lot from YouTube. I'm like, oh, cool, I can just learn how to
Yeah.
wholesale online. And when I told her about it, she's like, you can't trust the internet. You can't trust people you see on the internet. And I'm like, why
Yeah.
not? Like he seems like a pretty chill guy. And she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but you don't know if like what he's saying is really going to work. So she found a real estate seminar that was happening that was being ran by Robert Kiyosaki's organization, the author of
Uh-huh.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And we went to a 3-day workshop. And at the end of that 3-day workshop, I ended up signing up for a real estate mentorship, which cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
I
Say
spent
the
money I
dollar
did not.
amount.
Yeah,
Let's hear
so
it.
just shy of $25,000. So
Holy shit.
24,997 is how much I spent on a real estate mentorship to learn how to wholesale and to learn about real estate investing and how to analyze the market. And some people hear that number and they're like, dude, you could buy a real estate course online for $500 or $1,000, or you could just watch this stuff on YouTube for free or go to Bigger Pockets. What's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Like I
Yeah.
got all of that stuff. I got people literally like, what the hell is wrong with you? And
Yeah.
honestly, I think that real estate course is the reason I was successful because I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
Joe, when I got started, there wasn't a single day that I didn't think about quitting. In fact, I thought about quitting multiple times per day.
Yeah.
However, the thing that kept me in my seat, the thing that kept me on the phones, the thing that made me call and try one more time was the fact that I was more uncomfortable with the story at Thanksgiving being, hey, I spent 25 grand and did nothing with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I
That's
went into
insane.
debt.
So you had buy-in. Like you had to. You had no choice. You put 25K. You really didn't have the money, and now you got to control that narrative, right? Like, you know.
Dude, 100%. I had a lot of skin in the game. And just so people could get like some perspective on kind of where my finances were at that point in time, again, like had never made more than like about 24 grand in a year, living at home with my mom and sister. I had about $3,000 in my bank account in savings. I had one credit card with a $3,000 limit on it, and I owned my car free and clear. I had a 2001 Honda Accord that I paid $2,000 for. So my grand
Yeah.
net worth was about $8,000, and I just
Hmm.
invested essentially three times my net worth to get into
Yeah.
learn this real estate thing because my thought process was, well, look, I'm in a position right now where I'm basically living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And even if I make it into middle class, I look around at all the other people that are like living in middle class pretty comfortably, and they're basically living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So whether I'm poor, broke, or in debt, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. The only life that I'm not living paycheck to paycheck is if I go out and figure out how to earn money and how to earn it in with integrity. So with that being the case, I said I'm going to go learn this and realizing if I do win, right? Because if I lose, great, I lost money, whatever. But if I
Yeah.
win, what do I get on the back end? Well, the victory on the back end looked like being able to never have to worry about money again. Well,
Yeah.
that's a great bet. Why would I
Yeah.
not take that?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how were you able to scrap the money together? Did they like finance it or?
Wow, that's a good question because this was interesting actually. No, they did not finance it, which I'm
Okay.
actually grateful that the program that I bought into did not finance it because it was a lesson in creative financing, right?
Yeah.
Between Saturday night and Sunday morning, I had gone home and I was able to raise $25,000, which surprised the hell out of me because I've
Yeah.
never asked anyone for money, right? I went home and I started asking my mom for money, my dad for money, my uncle for money,
Yeah.
my girlfriend at the time, she chipped in, right? Like I started finding access to capital, which
Yeah.
blew my mind because again, like it was a limiting belief that was defeated instantly in one night. That I was like, wait a
Yeah.
second, I just raised $25,000 basically overnight. What else
Yeah.
can I do that I didn't think I could?
Yeah. You made 24,000 dollars in the whole year, but you were able to raise 25K just talking to people in your network, people just you deal with on a daily basis. That's awesome.
It was absolutely insane. And it's a skill that's come to serve me even as I progressed as a real estate investor. In fact, every property I've bought, and maybe we'll talk about this, maybe we won't, doesn't matter to me, but every
Yeah.
property I've ever bought up until this time, I've done so without using any of my own money, which is something that they taught me that. They spoke about it from the front of the room when I was first learning about real estate. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, that sounds really cool. But at the same time, like, what's the catch? It also sounds like a scam. And
Yeah.
then later on, by just getting this information and then putting the information to work, I started to see, oh, it's true. It's real. If
Yeah.
you understand this and you apply the information that you learn, you can do some really amazing things. And, it was the beginning of a different chapter.
Yeah. So what was your first proof of concept? Where was it your first deal? Was it when you were able to put together that 25K? When did you I guess the flame really start? And then when did you start throwing gasoline on it and really start, taking off?
Yeah. So the first proof of concept definitely wasn't to put in the 25K to get into debt. Like
Yeah.
it was a cool experience and it was
Yeah.
I definitely appreciated it more in hindsight than I
Yeah.
necessarily did in the exact moment that I was handing the money over. Definitely was like a gut punch and I'm sitting home, going home and thinking like, "Oh my God, I spent how much money on what?"
Yeah.
It was for me my saving grace, and I want to say this for everyone that's like getting into entrepreneurship, everyone that maybe you just invested in an e-commerce course or a real estate course or Amazon or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
freaking out because you're like, I just spent a lot of money and nothing's coming back in yet.
Yeah.
I didn't get my first proof of concept. I didn't get my first paycheck from real estate for 8 months. And not a lazy 8 months, not like a 8 months of, hey, I'm kind of twiddling my thumbs, not doing anything. I'm talking like 8 months of consistently banging the phones, 8 months of
Yeah.
consistently doing the work, being in it all day long, full time, like just going nose to the grindstone, work at it.
Yeah.
And when I had my first deal ended up being a 2-for-1 kind of special here. It was an individual by the name of Lorenzo Games. Is it okay if I tell like a quick story about like how
Yeah.
this first
Yeah.
deal came apart?
Yeah, absolutely. What town was it in?
All right, so this was up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm
Okay.
living down in New York. The reason I went up to Milwaukee, I was having a tough go at it. So when I got into real estate, let me actually give some reference and some
Yeah.
context. I go to that Robert Kiyosaki seminar in October of 2019. I pay 25 grand. I get this education. I start learning. All right, I'm excited. I'm diving in. I'm watching the videos, right? It's like before Zoom's even like big and popular. So it's not like we're hopping on this live call. I'm watching like pre-recorded videos. I basically paid 25 grand for pre-recorded videos and I don't care. I'm just eating this stuff up.
Yeah.
And now they're telling me to make these calls and do this stuff and I'm beginning to make these calls and then what starts to happen in January of 2020? The
Yeah.
world
COVID.
slowly starts shutting down,
Yeah.
right? Like the pandemic starts to kick on, everything starts shutting down. I'm living in New York, you're living in New York. You know how bad it was out there. Like
Yeah.
nobody was leaving their house. It was just like, and I'm over here calling people, hey, I'm a real estate investor. You want to sell your house? Oh my God, Joe, I was getting cursed out so bad, bro. Like I had never had a sales job before this. I had never really had
Yeah.
to face rejection like I was beginning to face. And
Yeah.
I'm getting rejected by like some of the angriest New Yorkers on the planet who had basically just been locked in their home or just been told that they were having to be locked in their home. So I'm really calling at an inappropriate time, not realizing I
Yeah.
don't know. Like I don't know up from down. I am so green. So as this goes on, as I'm like getting cussed out, eventually someone kind of plants the seed in my head that you don't need to stay in your local market. I go to Milwaukee, continue calling. Eventually, somebody after thousands of calls, like I'm kind of skipping through the process, but after thousands of
Yeah.
calls, someone finally is saying, "Hey, I'm interested in selling my house. I have a problem." His name is Lorenzo Games. I'm never gonna
Hmm.
forget him. He begins to tell me, "Well, listen, this is what's going on. I've got this house right now where my buddy is renting it out from me, and he's supposed to the agreement we have is he's a handyman. He's going to take care of some stuff around the house. In exchange, I give him a good rent. Well, the problem is since the pandemic, he hasn't been paying rent, and now he's ducking my calls. Also,
Okay.
I've got this other house where I've got this tenant there, or I was supposed to have this woman there. She's not
Hmm.
there. And after a couple of months of not receiving the check, I finally get a chance to go to the house and I open it up. And as I open the door and I walk around and I look around the house, I get to the basement and it is just flooded. Like the basement is just filled with water. I go upstairs, there's a hole in the roof, and water has just been seeping in to the basement, just ruining this house now for months. He
Yeah.
says, I was so stressed out about it I didn't even do anything. I walked out, closed the door, locked it. I haven't been back to the house in a couple of weeks. And he said to make matters worse, I work at the post office and I work overnight shift. So I go in the evenings and I work through the nights. And so when I get home in the morning, that's my chance to finally go and get some sleep. But then that's when all you real estate investors start calling me. And he's like, I'm just my phone's blowing up all day from you guys wanting to buy the house, wanting to buy the house. And he's like, no one's even like listening to me to understand that I'm trying to sleep. He's like, you're the
Yeah.
first guy that's actually even like taking a chance to even just ask me how I'm doing. Because
Yeah.
that was the thing. Like when I was having a conversation with him, I didn't really care about the house. I was just like, yo, what's going on with you? How are you doing? And like,
Yeah.
why did you even keep the house? Because he told me he never wanted to be a landlord. And I want people to understand this about like what we do as real estate investors. We look for problems. We don't look for properties. We look
Yeah.
for problems to solve. He never wanted to be a real estate investor. He never wanted to be a landlord. One of the
Hmm.
houses he inherited from his mother, and he felt it would be a terrible thing if he had sold his inheritance. And then
Yeah.
the other house he lived in, but he started dating a woman, and she said, let's go get another house together, and don't sell your house, just turn it into a rental. So she
Yeah.
talked him into turning it into rentals. So he never wanted rentals to begin with. And now they were just stressing him out. And here's what makes matters worse, Joe. This is really what put the cherry on top of it.
Yeah.
All the properties, including the third one that he was living in, all have mortgages on them.
Oh.
This dude is paying mortgages out of his paycheck,
Yeah.
three mortgages out of his paycheck every single month, not letting any
Yeah.
of them get behind.
Yeah.
I was
And
just like,
did
bro.
Milwaukee have like eviction moratoriums too, or
Yep.
okay, so
So
they
they
did.
had, yep. So they had the same sort of challenge with the eviction moratoriums. So people were starting to take advantage of this. Tenants were threatening their landlords. You can't evict me. Now it was still possible to evict, but it just became a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
And again, this guy, he's a tired landlord, like literally tired. He's trying to
Yeah.
sleep. He doesn't have time to do this stuff because during the time that the rest of the world is operating, he's asleep so he can be ready to work through the night so he can pay these three mortgages. So he really
Yeah.
was like in a tough space.
Yeah.
So with that, I asked him, what have you tried to do here?
Yeah.
He mentioned that he actually reached out to some of the companies. He called on one of the We Buy Houses sign, right? The
Yeah.
We Buy Ugly Houses, that big franchise. And he said, those guys came over and I was actually getting ready to sell to them. We agreed on a price and everything. He tells me the number. I was like, wait, what were they going to sell it? What were you going to sell it for? He tells me the number. Each of them were basically going to sell for about $35,000. And I say,
Hmm.
okay, but then what happened? Why didn't you sell? He said, so those guys came to the house, Joe. And when they got here, man, they just start walking through the house and they're like trashing it, saying like this is this and this is that, and they're just like beating me up on price, and they negotiate even lower in person. And he said, dude, it just felt terrible, just the way they came and the way they just like walked through, and they were just kind of like swinging and just pushing him down. I was like, yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's messed up. And when I ran my numbers, Joe, well, the original prices that they were offering him, the $35,000, those were great prices, like that for an investor to buy it at.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, well, that original price that they gave you, was that an issue? He's like, no, that would have worked. I said, well, listen, I'm not saying that I can, but if I could do that price, would you sell me the homes? He's like, yeah, but here's the problem. Here's one caveat. One of the houses, there's a $30,000 mortgage on it. The other one has a $42,000 mortgage on it. He's asking me, can I
Uh,
come up to 42? Listen, I can't. I looked at the numbers. I really can't make it up to 42. 35 really is an appropriate number, and that's actually on the high end,
no.
but here's what I can do. If you will allow me, I'll make the payments on your behalf. Right.
Awesome.
What we'll do is we'll purchase the home subject to the existing mortgage. We'll leave that mortgage in place. I'm going to leave it in your name, but I'm going to
Yeah.
continue to make the payments until we can either refinance or sell the home on the back end.
So you took both of them subject to?
No, I took one cash and one subject to. So the
Okay.
one that had the mortgage on it, the 30,000, we just cashed him out. He made some money, and the other one we took over the payments. So he didn't have to come to the closing table, saving him about having to show up to the closing table with $7,000 just to close that deal. A little bit, it would have
Yeah.
been a little bit more, but essentially he was able to just get out of that deal without losing any more money. And Joe, you asked earlier about proof of concept.
Yeah.
That was proof of concept because I was standing in my bedroom in my red pajamas, my Ralph Lauren's. I had some Ralph Lauren red pajamas that were given to me as a Christmas gift. I
Yeah.
remember them so clearly when the transaction happened, and I'm just like, no freaking way this is actually working
And
for me.
you're all the way in New York.
All the way in New York, never been to Milwaukee, never met the guy in person, never knew him before this phone call. I'm a total stranger on the phone with another stranger, and he's selling me one of his houses cash, and he's allowing me to take over his mortgage on another property. And I'm just
Incredible.
like, this cannot be real. And then I got a check, and I was like, holy crap, this is real.
Yeah.
This is very real. That check is still
Yeah.
hanging in my bedroom wall back in New York.
So did you end up wholesaling those? What did you end up? Did you flip them? What'd you end up doing?
Great question. So both of those properties I ended up wholesaling to my buddy Kirk. Shout out to Kirk, the same guy that sat
Yeah.
down with me and let me pick his brain for 3 hours that said, don't let this be a waste of my time. Well,
Yeah.
he's very happy that I sold him both of those deals because when he showed me the profit he made on the back of those deals, I was like, I should have sold those deals to you for more. Because he made a hefty profit on both of those deals. But I
That's
was just
awesome.
happy to do my first deal, happy to do it with a friend. In fact, he's one of the few people that when I go back to New York, I make it a point. He and I go and get dinner every time I'm back in New York.
Yeah, that's incredible. And how much was that first wholesale fee?
Oh, so check this out, right? It was life-changing money. Life-changing money. It was a grand whopping $4,000 assignment. So
Damn.
I say life-changing because like that's no one's retiring off of a $4,000
Yeah.
assignment. But for me, it was life-changing because Joe, it was the first time I had ever made a $4,000 check. I had never made, I'd
Yeah.
worked, 45, 50 hour weeks and barely made $1,000. And so
Yeah.
then to be able, and that was bi-weekly, to make $4,000 in a single check was just absolutely crazy. And again,
Yeah.
I was brand new. Like, had I known what I know now, I could have easily have made probably about 15 to 20K on that one deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, but hey, 4 grand is, it's not the worst. I mean, for a wholesale, it's like, I wouldn't touch a wholesale now for only if, like, would you do a 4K assignment now? No, right?
Dude,
Not worth your
not
time.
not at all. Like my minimum deal flow now is I won't touch a deal unless we can make at least $70,000 on it. Not a
Oh,
wholesale. Like that's got to be like
okay.
a flip, or if we're gonna hold the property and we're gonna refi it, I need to be able to at least pull out $10,000 on my cash out refi and own that property for free. Because my
Yeah.
standards change as I learned, as this became real, and I recognized, oh my gosh, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
My I became more picky in what I was
Yeah.
picking up. And I started to be able to cultivate patience because I knew the process worked. See, in the
Yeah.
beginning, what happens is the hardest part for anyone getting into this business or getting into the industry isn't that you need to believe that the process works. You already know the process works, right? You
Yeah.
already bought into the idea that real estate is a good investment. No one needs to convince a person about that. What
Yeah.
needs to be convinced is that real estate will work for you, that it will work for me, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the hardest part as a new investor, as a new entrepreneur, is will the process work for me?
Yeah.
And so once I understood that, okay, I can make this process work. I'm somebody that can make the process works. My tolerance and my patience started to increase for this, and I started to be able to be more selective and say no to more opportunities and say yes to better opportunities. Because what I found was, it's the same amount of time to make a
Yeah.
$4,000 check as it is to make a $40,000 check.
Yeah. It's like, I know you're a big fan of Hermosi, and I mean, he refers to Naval Ravikant, his idea of leverage. You know, it's the same amount of input to get more output. So you got to be going after those bigger deals rather than just like trying to get more little ones. Because at the end of the day, you want to limit your input to get as much output as possible, and that's leverage. Um,
Man, you couldn't have said it better. It's something that I want more people to understand is when we're looking at anything, when we're looking at any opportunity, it's really important to understand that concept of leverage.
yeah.
And when we really get that dialed in and we lock in to a highly leveraged vehicle, be it real estate, the reason we like real estate so much isn't because I don't like real estate. I actually don't like real estate as far as like houses. Like I don't sit and
Yeah.
watch HGTV in my free time. I don't fantasize about flipping a house. I don't get excited about designing anything. I
Yeah.
don't like managing contractors. None of that. However, what does excite me about it is the numbers that I could
Yeah.
put one in and I can pull 20 out. I
Yeah.
could put one in and I could pull 100 out. That's very exciting
Yeah.
because it's a high leverage vehicle. So I want people to think about that when they're looking at whatever endeavor they're considering to learn, whatever the next skill is. Start to
Yeah.
look at what's the leverageability of that skill.
Yeah.
Good
And
leverage skill, sales and marketing.
to that point, I mean, skills in general, it really doesn't matter what field you're in because at the end of the day, I mean, you could always get leverage from hiring employees. There's leverage to be found in all different spaces, but learning the skills, like when you look at a W-2 employee versus running your own business, going your own path, building your own thing, that's where the leverage really comes in. And when that skill's just compounding on itself. So it sounds, like when you first got started, I'm sure you didn't really fully grasp everything. Now you know tons more, right? Were you part of Pace? Were you part of Sub Two when you did that first deal or no?
When I get that first deal done, yeah, at that point I had been inside the Sub 2 mentorship for maybe about 4 months at that point.
Okay.
So I had joined into the Kiyosaki group. Phenomenal information, one of the best educations in real estate I ever received. Missing a community. So
Yeah.
during that time, Robert Kiyosaki, and I don't know what his organization's up to nowadays, but at that time there wasn't a strong sense of community. Thankfully, I had one of the best mentors in there, a man by the name of Pip Stellick. So shout out to Pip. He
Yeah.
just absolutely always was there to hold my hand. He always responded to like my emails, my questions. So he kept me in the game. And then when I came across Pace and I met him and I joined into that community, it was truly a network of go-givers who wanted to help, who wanted to show support, and who allowed each other to leverage one another's skills. So you
Yeah.
no longer needed to wield every skill at once, because that's one of the toughest things, as well as just as you learn more about your business, you're going to realize there are more moving parts, and you're going to
Yeah.
realize there are more skills to master. And the big mistake everyone makes is I believing I have to master all the skills all at once,
Hmm.
instead of seeing, look, I don't need to master every skill. Joe knows his market extremely well. He has the contractors, he has the connections. If I find a deal, I'm going to go and I'm going to JV with Joe. I'm going to go lean
Yeah.
with Joe. I'm going to go collaborate with Joe, because now I can get this deal to the finish line.
Yeah.
And now we
Yeah.
can both grow.
And I think that's a super important point. I mean, I've interviewed a couple people so far, and I've had pretty long discussions with people. And generally, when they start taking it to the next level, is they, um, like the book Go Giver, right? The reason I actually read that book is because you recommended that. And what they talk about is being like a connector, right? Um, maybe you don't know how to dispo a deal in a specific market. But maybe you have someone who does, and it takes a lot of stress off your plate. And not everything has to be this solopreneur mindset where it's just kind of me versus everyone. When you have a strong network around you of everyone doing their own thing and everyone wants each other to grow, shit gets a lot easier, man. It gets
It
a lot
does.
easier.
And what's interesting is when we look at why individuals typically struggle with this, right? Because I want to say it, like, I'm happy we're talking about this right now. We're saying it
Yeah.
out loud because it's a reframing of the mind. It's a healthy reframing of the mind. And it's a new
Yeah.
perspective that entrepreneurs really should consider as they're on their journey. Typically, most people grew up in the system of go to school, go to middle school, high school, college, etc. And
Yeah.
during that time, you're talking 18, 22, 28 plus years of being taught that if you begin to share and work with other people, what did we call that in school? If you and I are working on a test together, right?
Yeah.
They call that cheating. You were
Yeah.
punished for collaborating in school.
Yeah.
And now you get out into the business world, you get out into the real world, and the same behavior that you were once punished for is actually the behavior that grows you exponentially. It's a
Yeah.
tough mental shift to make because you were punished all these years. So, on a subconscious level, you associate collaboration with punishment, you associate it as cheating,
Yeah.
and you feel you have to do everything on your own. You're supposed to do everything on your own because that was just the system that you came from, because you were rewarded in that previous system for doing it alone.
Yeah, and it's almost like you got to go through like this, like you have to be like born again and like really just like wipe all that shit out. And that kind of leads me to another thing I wanted to mention is, in school too, they kind of emphasize if you do bad at something, it's, you failed the test or whatever, and you get punished for that. Whereas that's not how it works in business, right? Things keep moving, the world still spins, and you have to figure it out. You have to reinvent yourself, figure out the mistakes you made, and reinvent yourself. And another thing I wanted to bring up today, you recommend Outwitting the Devil I remember when you read it, you spoke very highly of it, and I was like, all right, I got to read it. And there's a quote. It's failure is a man-made circumstance. It is never real until accepted by man as permanent. And that is huge, huge. And if you can just understand that failure is really not, obviously you don't want to end up going bankrupt, but failure is just, it's a continuum. Just keep going, just keep rolling.
Yeah, it's made up. It truly is actually made up. And here's a prime example. One of our early deals, I forget which
Yeah.
one. My current business partner and I. This is actually the deal that he and I started working together on. When I would
Yeah.
wholesale in Milwaukee, he would go. He was a realtor. He would go and walk a lot of the properties for me and gather photos, things of that
Okay.
nature. So he was my boots on the ground. One
Yeah.
day he says, "Hey, do you want to do a deal together?" I say, "Sure. Let's go and buy a property. Let's get our first rental together."
Yeah.
So we buy this property, and the plan is we're going to burr it, right? We're going to buy it, renovate it, refinance it, do the whole renting, everything.
Yeah.
And so we're just two young guys, like, haha, we got this great deal. Got it 30 cents or 40 cents on the dollar. We got room to do the rehab, and we're doing it. and we're talking to our credit union there, and they're like, yeah, you guys are going to be able to refi, no problem. This is going to be awesome. Great. So we do the work. It's time to refi, and we go back to this credit union. I'm not going to say their name because I actually don't really like them. So I go to them and we're like, all right, we're ready to do the refi. We talk to our rep, the same guy that like he got us to put our money in the bank with them because he's like, no worries, we're gonna be able to
Yeah.
refi you. Come time to do the refi. Yeah, guys, we can't refi you. What do you mean you can't refi us? Yeah, your business, your LLC is not even 2 years old. Yeah, but you knew this before we got into it. Well, what else can we do? He's like, well, you're unemployed and he's a brand new realtor. And I'm like, dude, we told you all of this stuff beforehand because that was my biggest concern when
Yeah.
opening up the bank account was would I be able to refi? In fact, I asked him that very early on. I made sure of it. Like we had that conversation at nauseum, only
Yeah.
to at that final moment him saying, can't refi. And I'm like, dude, I got private money. Like I borrowed people's money to do this deal.
Yeah.
Like I have to pay them back. I told them I was going to give them their money back.
How
So
much
in
did you
that
borrow?
moment, I borrowed $50,000 from one lender and $20,000 from another. So
Were
it was
they private
$70,000.
lenders or
Yep, all private lenders.
institutions? Okay.
Private lenders. So people that had been following me on social media. Well, actually, one person had been following me on social media. The other person was my mom.
Okay. So you have 75K that you need to pay back and you can't figure out how to get money to refi.
Yep. So I'm standing in that place. I'm like, all right, I'm borrowing more money than I even make, and
Yeah.
like I don't know how to make this money, and crap, what do I do? Well, I could have looked at it as a total failure, but then instead it's like, all right, let's come up with another solution. We have multiple exits because my mentor always taught me have multiple exits.
Yeah.
So at that place, we had enough equity that we were able to turn around and just simply flip the house. We put it back on the market, listed it for sale, sold it, made a profit, paid our lenders back, and from there, we just learned flipping. So
Yeah.
from a failed burr, we learned how to flip properties, and so our flipping business started from that.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So it's that constant reminder. I like to say this to people: you're gonna lose no matter what. Like you're gonna start entrepreneurship, you're going to experience losses. The quicker
Yeah.
you can experience them, the better. And never walk away from your loss without taking your lesson.
Yeah.
Because that's the golden nugget inside of a loss. Like that's the prize. And I see so many people take the loss and leave the lesson. And it's like, bro, what are you doing? You're leaving the most fat. That's like the people
Yeah.
that like get ribs and they leave all the meat on the ribs. It's like, bro, you're leaving the meat on the ribs. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So break down that deal. So you raised 75K total. You had to renovate this thing. What did you actually buy it for?
We bought that property for, I think we bought it for about 43,000, something like that. We
Okay.
bought it for about 43,000. We put just a little over 20 in. We had some minor holding cost,
Yeah.
and then on the back end, we ended up selling it for I want to say 110. I think about 110 is what we sold it for on the back
Okay.
end.
That's a
Yep,
W.
that's one of the earlier deals, and I could like go find one of the HUDs for that one.
Yeah.
That was like one of the early deals, and again, like it was just we were learning strategy because we thought the goal was we were going to be able to get inside there and refinance at 75%. So we were
Yeah.
going to essentially pull 75 out, and
Yeah.
we should have been just at like that break even after closing costs and things of that nature, maybe having a few dollars in it, and we would have had
Yeah.
rental property.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it sounds like it was still a W. It still kind of worked out. Like you took the loss and turned it into a win, which is awesome.
100%.
Now, Marlon, so I know a big change for you. You were living in New York, and then what happened? Where are you living now? Are you in Arizona?
Yep, Phoenix, Arizona, down in
Okay,
Gilbert
so
now.
yeah, so you're in Arizona still. Um, what made you move? And I know it probably has to do with the campfire analogy, so I want to hear it.
Yeah. So I had always wanted to get up and travel cross country. Like I just always wanted to go live in a different place. I was born and raised in New York,
Yeah.
and one day a very good friend of mine, Naman, he and I were out grabbing burgers. He comes over, he picks me up from the house, and
Naman,
we're heading back.
Naman, Naman,
Yep.
yeah, okay, yeah, all right. I talked to Naman not too long ago. I didn't realize you guys knew each other. That's awesome.
Oh
But
yeah, I love Naman. Great, great guy. Funny enough, I met him the same night I met Kirk. So two great
okay,
guys that I met at the same RIA, the same night. So Naman and I are parked out front of my house, and we're just talking. And he goes, "Marlon, I thought you said you wanted to get out of here. I almost feel like we're having like a movie out of like a scene out of a movie. Like you said, you
yeah,
always wanted to go and like see the world." And I'm like, "Yeah, what about it?" And he's like, "Well, what's your excuse? Why are you still here?" And in that moment when he called me out on it, a good friend will call you out on things.
yeah,
I really had to sit down and like analyze my life and recognize, crap, he's right. Like I got no see in the past I had a couple of reasons. And I won't really get into them right now, but I had a couple of reasons on why I couldn't leave New York.
hmm,
And those reasons were now gone. They didn't exist anymore.
yeah,
And so at that point, I was in my room and I was sitting like, yeah, he's right. Like, why am I not leaving? So I went and I circled my calendar that night. It was a Saturday night. I circled my calendar for a Sunday. It was two Sundays later. That's the day I'm leaving. Didn't know where I was gonna go. Didn't have a plan. Didn't really like have a ton of money yet either. But I just knew that was gonna be the day I left. And
hmm,
my thought process was, I want to go and be around people who are like-minded, who are crushing it, who I can
yeah,
learn from, who I can grow with. Because as an athlete, I used to do parkour and skateboarding. I learned that when I put myself in the environment of professional athletes, when I put myself around people who are better than me, I
yeah,
grew exponentially. I shortened the time frame and I heightened my skill achievement in a very short period of time. And I
yeah,
wanted the same experience with entrepreneurship. So Phoenix, I eventually landed on Phoenix because I have a lot of good relationships out here through the Sub 2 community, through knowing Pace Morby and Cody Barton and Zach Keebs, and just a lot of great guys who were willing to pour into me. And I loaded up my little car, drove cross country, and I've been happily in Arizona now for the last year and a half. Just grateful to be around people because I learned this rule from Tony Robbins. He said proximity is power. Says if you want to level up in any area of your life, find the people who are doing it at the highest level and go and figure out how to get into that room and how to bring value to those people. So
yeah.
if you go and you take care of that, 80% of your challenges will get washed away by being in proximity with the people who are doing what you want to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, props to you for just kind of doing a full reset and just moving all the way across the country. It's incredible. And like, honestly, did you, so I mean, that's been a personality trait of yours where you can just kind of just do things without really, because a lot of people overplan, analysis paralysis. Are you the kind of guy who will just say screw it and make it happen? Or talk to me.
So, great question. That's a really, really great question. It's in fact, it's something that I go through when I coach my clients. One of the questions that we go through early on is I ask them, what's your decision making process?
Yeah.
Every last one of us has a decision making process. We all make big decisions, and some of us are more analytical. Some of
Yeah.
us are, we're going to go through a T chart and weigh the pros and cons. Some people are, I'm got to go and talk to my uncle. I got to talk to my sister. I got to go talk to my pastor.
Yeah.
Some people are, I got to sleep on it or give me a week and then I can make a decision. Whatever your process is, you got to process. And
Yeah.
so I've taken the time, I'm a very self reflective person, or I like to believe I am at least. And I've come to realize that at the end of the day, I make decisions based off of intuition and gut. That's
Yeah.
just how I make decisions. I can't always explain my decisions. I don't always have a rational reason for why I'm doing what I'm doing or why I did what I did. Later on, I'm usually able to explain it after I reflect on it, but it's a feeling. And
Yeah.
so, knowing that I never regret the decisions I make based on my gut, I've allowed myself to trust my gut. So, with that being the case, when it came time to make the decisions to get up and move, it felt like the right thing to do. Because here's when I say when it felt like the right thing to do, what that means, translation, it felt like the scary thing to do.
Yeah.
And the scary thing to do is typically the thing that grows me.
Yeah.
So, that was the thing I did. And it's
Now,
the thing I will continue to do.
you just said something there that you were able to trust your gut and kind of trust the process, trust yourself to go there, and it scared you. Now, do you have any advice to someone who really they can't even, they're not at a point to even trust themselves, right? What do you say to that person who's like, I don't, it doesn't make sense to me, right? It's not clicking. I don't know if I'm ready yet or whatever. What do you, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so great question. Learning to listen to your gut and to trust your decision-making process, it's a muscle like any other muscle.
Yeah.
I'm still big in my athletics, which means if I went to the gym and let's say Joe, you and I are working out and you've been consistently showing up to the gym for the last few years, so you get inside there and you're constantly working your legs, you load up 400 pounds on the barbell and you start squatting 400.
I
I'm
wish,
not
man, not these legs, not these legs.
right? But like if that were the case, like I couldn't
Yeah.
follow you. It'd
Yeah.
be silly for me to look and say like, man, Joe's doing that big weight. I need to be able to do that big weight. But it's like, no, I got to start where I'm at. So with listening to my gut and listening to my intuition, I have stories where I didn't listen to my gut. In fact,
Yeah.
this is a very simple one, for example. One night back while I'm living in New York, I'm at a Barnes and Noble. I used to spend my Saturday nights in Barnes and Noble. I was a little bit of a different guy. Like I didn't like going out to the clubs and the bars that much. I got bored of that scene very quickly, and I found
Hmm.
I'd rather just go read personal development books. So
Yeah.
I was hanging out in a Barnes and Noble one night, and as I'm reading, I get this gut feeling internally, like almost like this like voice, and I don't get this kind of feeling like often like this, but it was just loud, and it just told me to stand up and look around the store for a minute. And I'm on the second floor. Joe, I'm looking around the store at everybody in there. There's a good maybe like 20, 30 people inside the store. This feeling and this gut tells me go and pay for everybody's books right now.
Really?
Joe, I'm like when I hear that, I'm looking around. First off, I'm like, that is definitely not me talking because I am not. Like I that's not my those aren't my thoughts. Like I'm not the dude that's sitting there like, oh yeah, let me just go and pay for everybody's books. Like I'm
Crazy.
living at home with my mom. Like I'm not paying for everybody's books. And
Yeah.
so I begin to like count how many books I'm seeing in people's hands, and I'm like, Jesus, like that's got to be like 3 grand worth of books like you're asking me to pay for. And so I hesitate and I don't listen to the gut. I don't listen to the feeling. I don't listen to that little voice. And I like almost start like negotiating with it. Like, well, can I just like maybe buy one person's book? And like the voice goes quiet on me. Like it's not talking to me anymore. It's like I'm not. The
Yeah.
feeling's gone, and I'm like, oh man, like did I just lose the feeling? So about 10 more minutes go by. I finally get up and I'm getting ready to leave the store and I'm getting ready to pay for my book. And at this point, it's the store is almost closed for the night, so most everybody is gone. And as I'm standing online, one kid and his mom get online behind me. Joe, I pay for my book, and then I just turn around and I just ask them like, "Hey, would it be okay if I pay for your books tonight?" And the mom is like, "What?" I'm like, "I know it's a weird request, but can I just pay for your books tonight? Like, I really don't want anything." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, like he's been begging me to come to the bookstore for the last week to get this book, and like we just haven't had the time and we haven't been able to." And yeah, and so they let me pay for their books. As I'm walking out of the store, Joe, I get this feeling of just like elation, of joy, just like I've like such a deep found joy that I've
Yeah.
never really felt before. And I'm realizing, holy crap, that gut feeling, that voice that I heard was trying to show me this feeling. If it felt that good to pay for one kid's book, how nice, how amazing would it have felt to have been able to take care of everybody in that store? So in that
Yeah.
moment, I learned the next time you get that feeling, the next time you hear that voice, you listen. You don't hesitate. You just do whatever it says.
Yeah.
So that was like a promise. I had to make myself that promise. And so now when I do hear that voice, when it does pop up, I don't think. I just go. I just immediately jump on it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, a lot of people struggle with that though, and one thing. So I'm big on Hermosi, and I keep tooting his horn a little bit, but he says outwork your self-doubt, right? And sometimes you do have to have you just got to trust the process, right? It doesn't make rational sense right now, but you just got to trust the process. Um, and I think that's a common belief amongst people who are growing, people who are trying to be successful, people who actually are successful. And that's something, like you said, it's a muscle. It's a muscle. And even doing things like that, really just like, that's got to be freaking awesome. And it's got to feel pretty
Yeah.
good.
And I would argue a person, here's the interesting thing. People are amazing at forgetting. They're
Yeah.
so good at forgetting. Because if I ask a person to really sit down and look through your own personal case history
Yeah.
of every time you've ever had a gut feeling that you've listened to, ask yourself, has it worked out? I have not come across a single person yet who's told me, yeah, you know what, I had a gut feeling and it didn't work out. I followed my gut and it didn't work out. Everyone always says, yeah, I never regret it. And when I ask, did it work out? I want to know, did you regret it? And even in the case where someone says, well, you know, this happened afterwards, and I say, okay, so what happened? They say, well, you know, I listened to my gut and this negative result happened. I was like, but how did it play out over a longer time span? Actually, that ended
Yeah.
up being one of the best things that ever happened to me. Great.
Yeah.
So over a longer time horizon, it worked out. It was
Yeah.
actually exactly what you needed.
Yeah.
So when we understand that, it makes it easier to begin to trust it. And at least from a logical understanding of knowing that given a longer time horizon, this is the right decision to move me closer towards the goal.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a practice of recognizing when it's there, allowing yourself to jump into it. And this is why I say proximity is power, because it's easier to do this when you're surrounded by other people who live like this daily,
Yeah.
who are courageous daily, who look at uncomfortable situations and jump into that situation every single day, where the average person typically isn't doing this. If someone's coming from the regular 9 to 5 grind, you're not
Mhm.
surrounded by people who are willing to jump into uncomfortable situations on purpose, who are willing to listen to that gut motion, that gut feeling. It's not the normal conversation. In fact, you tell someone you're having this thought about doing this crazy thing, they're going to say, "Why would you ever do that?" They're going to talk it down. They're going to kill it before you even have a chance to bring
Yeah.
it to life. But if
Yeah.
you're in a different circle, the rest of us are going to be like, "Oh hell yeah, dude, bro, let me help you."
Yeah.
Like it's a
Yeah.
totally
That's,
different
it's
conversation.
powerful. And now, Marlon, are you, and I'm sure you probably are, you're into parkour. I mean, when it, outside of real estate, outside of business, are you challenging yourself, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations?
Bro, every day. So I have
Okay.
core values that I read out loud every day. And it's funny,
Okay.
throughout this conversation, we've touched on several of my core values, one of which is be comfortable being uncomfortable. The other
Yeah.
one that we touched on before as well is trust on yourself to always find a way. Trust that
Yeah.
no matter what, you always find a way. So as far as being comfortable being uncomfortable, every single day I do something purposefully. I walk myself into an uncomfortable place purposefully for the sake of hitting the wall, right? We all heard about, like, if you know runners, runners talk about hitting the wall. And getting to the wall and hitting the wall isn't the miraculous thing. Anybody can hit the wall. It's
Yeah.
what do you do when you get to that wall? Do you scale over it or do you stop and go back? Most people stop and go back. What I like to do is I like to get myself to scale over it. So, prime example, something very basic. I run in the morning. This morning I
Okay.
did a little over 5 miles, and as I was doing it, I was doing as interval sprints. So 4 minutes of sprinting, 4 minutes of jogging, 4 minutes of
God.
sprinting, 4 minutes of jogging. By the time I got to the fourth 4 minute sprint, I was starting to cramp up heavily on my side, and I could
Yeah.
just feel my body wanting to slow down. And I know at that moment I knew I hit the wall. Like I was very
Yeah.
consciously aware. I'm like, I'm at the wall. And now what do I want to do? And I told myself, we scale the wall. This is the time to scale. This is the time to push.
Yeah.
And you're going to be done with this run in 16 minutes, regardless of if you climb this wall or not. So,
Yeah.
how do you want to finish this? And that was the mental thought process. And
Yeah.
so I do that because that then drags over later into the day when I've got to sit down and I need to start making calls that I don't necessarily want to do. I would prefer to sit down and watch anime all day. I love anime. I would prefer to
Yeah.
sit back and just watch some good anime and call it a day, but that doesn't move me closer to my goal.
Yeah.
Instead, I've got to go and make calls, which means I got another wall to scale. But I already scaled one wall this morning. What's another? What's
Yeah.
another? What's making one more phone call? What's sending one more email? What's talking to my assistant one more time?
Yeah. No, it's like, you're embracing the suck. You're getting used to it, and you know, you're hardening yourself to all the shitty things that are out there. I like that. Now,
Can I
I
add one thing to it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So this, I want to add this to it because I feel like level one is like I was embracing the suck, and it's something new that I'm discovering. Is I'm now using my willpower not to do hard things, but to take hard things and convince myself that I love them. So now that's what I'm using my willpower for, because if you've ever noticed anything that you love, it doesn't matter how hard it is, you keep coming back, you keep showing back up to it. It's like people that
Yeah.
are in relationships, right? Like sometimes you see a person in a terrible relationship and you're like, why do they keep going back to it? Oh,
Yeah.
because they love it.
Yeah.
So because when you love things, you keep showing back up. Why does that
Yeah.
dude keep working on the same car? He's been working on that muscle car for the last 20 years, and he finally takes it out to the beach, and after 2 hours of driving, it blows, and he takes it back home, and he keeps working on it again. Why is he working on it again? Oh,
Yeah.
because he loves it. So
Yeah.
I'm now using my will to convince myself that I love the things that are difficult. I'm learning to love the things that I used to say, I hate this, but I'm just going to will myself through it.
Yeah.
Well, eventually that willpower runs up, but if I learn to love it, I don't need the willpower anymore.
Yeah. You're tricking yourself. Um, so Marlon, I want to ask you, I kind of want to fast forward to your business now. Um, what are you guys doing in terms of deals per year, deal flow? What does that look like? What is your business model? Take us through that.
Yeah, great question. So, with my real estate business, it looks like we have a rental portfolio of just over 20 doors. We just
Okay.
sold a few properties.
What
We're
states?
sitting on all everything is up in Milwaukee except for this house that I'm currently in right now. This house is in Gilbert.
Okay.
This property is also an investment property. We call it the Mindset Manor because what I've
Okay.
done is I've turned this into an entrepreneurial incubator. So inside the house is a 6 bedroom, 4 bath home, 4,700 square feet, and I have other entrepreneurs living inside the house as well. And everyone's in here just like working on themselves. So I rent it out by the room to other people. So it's like a house
Really?
hack, if you will. Uh huh.
Really? So it's a fucking
Yeah, man.
incubator.
Dude, yeah, dude, like cause I didn't get to go away for college, bro. I stayed on Long Island. I went
Yeah.
to Nassau Community College. I always wanted to go away. So this is me like selfishly living out my college experience, just like getting to hang out with homies. Like we got like the big whiteboards that we bust out, and
Yeah. That's
yeah,
incredible. I mean, and typically when you go home, that's your time to turn off. A lot of people don't want to look at their business, but you see your boy in the other room and he's making calls, he's grinding. You're like, oh shit, now I gotta go do work. That's awesome.
yeah, and it's fun. Like I love my business. I love what I get to do, and like I'm a big believer of like staying in alignment. So we've got the rental portfolio of long-term rentals. So everything is up in Milwaukee. Besides this house, all the other homes are up in Milwaukee. They're all long-term rentals except for one corporate rental where we're renting it out to a roofing company where
Okay.
they're on a year lease, but they occupy the home 6 months out of the year because they fly their workers in from
Yeah.
Mexico, which is awesome because we get premium rents on that property and they're some of our best tenants. Never have an issue with them. And then we're still flipping. We just finished up selling our last two flips. They made about 70K each on profit after all expenses were said and done. Right now, before we're actually in the middle of restructuring how we're going to go forward. So check this out, Joe.
Yeah.
A lot of what we were doing in the beginning was very much like bootstrapping, like just figuring things out. Like I told you, like we started flipping because we were trying to buy and hold a rental, and that
Yeah.
just totally screwed up. So we started a flipping company out of that. And so as we've been able to go on, we've been able to make money, but very sloppy, very wild, wild west. And
Hmm.
so now, because I've continued to learn, we're always learning, always putting ourselves in better rooms, always being around other people. We started creating SOPs. So right now, as we're finishing up these last few projects, what we're doing is we're going to take a momentary pause to now script out the SOPs better to make sure that we have the right systems and processes, because that ultimately is what a business is. A
Yeah.
business is SOPs. It's not the product. It's what are the systems behind it? What's the team behind it? What's the model? And so that's what we're doing from our real estate standpoint. And then from my coaching business, that one beautifully, because I already knew this stuff now. I had the right foundation. So I built with a different foundation around my coaching business where that's already has SOPs in place. It already has the scale in place. It was already like a lot of this stuff was already thought out from the very beginning.
Hmm.
And so that's where a lot of my attention is right now. Even as we're gearing up, next month we're going to be doing our first mastermind here at the property. So I'm excited about that as well.
That's
So
awesome.
all in all, like the flipping business is we're looking for holding off on acquiring any new properties for the rest of the year until the SOPs are finished.
Yeah.
But so far this year, we've done, I would say, just shy of 350,000. I have to go look at the exact numbers. I'll go like look in my QuickBooks, but we've done
Yeah.
just shy of 350 from profits for the flips. And then with the acquisitions, we're holding about, I say we, if I don't include the Mindset Manor here, we're holding just a little over $1.5 million dollars in real estate.
Awesome. Now, Marlon, so one thing you did say there that caught my attention was you said the SOPs, right? You're slowing down the business. You're saying, all right, this was great because you guys clearly are making it work, but what was it? It was just too chaotic. There was too much chaos, or what?
Dude, so that was the biggest thing, and like this is kind of like the other side of business, and like I'm actually
Yeah.
like almost like more happy to talk about this because I feel like no one ever talks about this. We always talk about
Yeah.
like the highlight reels and like the wins and the victories, but
Yeah.
quite frankly, I learned way more from the stuff I screw up, and so
Yeah.
like there's been a lot of screw ups, and it came from having a lack of systems, a lack of each time we did something, it was being done slightly different each time.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of mental capacity, a lot of mental bandwidth being wasted by not having the proper systems in place, not having the contractors all communicate the same way, having things come in from email. Some people are texting it, some people. So we're looking for information in different places, and it bogged down and slowed down the system. So although
Yeah.
yes, we made money, I'm also aware that we lost money. Like we didn't lose money as in money came out of our pocket, but we lost money in the sense of if we were better systemized, we would have done these deals faster. We would
Yeah.
have had less holding costs. We would have been more efficient on the pricing. We would have gotten better deals with our contractors, better deals on our material. Everything would have been better had we been more efficient.
Yeah.
So I'm
You're
taking a
sharpening
pause.
the blade, right? You just
Correct.
want to. So, like one thing, I just had a conversation with someone who, so I just recently joined Collective Genius,
Oh,
and
nice.
that, yeah, I mean, side note, that was a big step for me in terms of investing the funds to join that. But I'm super glad I did. And one of the guys I was talking to, um, similar to what you're going through, right? He's in California. He's investing in Pennsylvania, doing flips, and this guy's actively doing 9 rehabs right now. Like I can't even put my head around it. Virtually flipping and doing 9 rehabs. Um, and he said the same thing as me, right? Because I'm going through a similar situation as you. Is like it was all working, but it was stressful. I was getting burned out, and it's hard to keep that going. It's hard to make that sustainable. The chaos was just like killing you, and you got into this thing to actually enjoy it. So I'm going through a bit of a transition in my business. For those who don't know, I invest in real estate. I was doing mainly buy and holds. Now I'm transitioning. I started selling some rentals off, and I'm transitioning to more short-term flips, like wholesale kind of projects and wholesales. Um, but that's only going to be for about 6 months or so, right? And then I could go back to rentals. Just I was having issues with the rental portfolio taking up too much of my time, and it was hurting my pipeline. And ultimately, I hated it, right? It was stressing me the hell out. It never stopped. And he was going through the same exact thing. So, and it's crazy that you're going through a similar thing. And we started talking about this, and it seems like it's a general theme that no matter what, I guess, uh, stage in your business you're in, um, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be growing pains. And you need to, every once in a while, you need to take a step back and say, all right, we did great. How could we have improved it? And how do we make sure moving forward it's less stressful, there's less friction?
1,000%. It's one of the reasons when you look at small business owners who never seem to grow any larger than they are, it's because they never take that time to stop and pull back.
Okay.
They don't reflect anymore. They don't They got excited, they found something that worked, they found the groove, and then they're riding that same groove, that same gear year after year after year after year after year, and they're locked in, and they're one bad day away from being out of business.
Yeah.
Instead, I stop, we pull back, and I'm happy to put the brakes on. Like some people would be afraid to say like I'm putting the brakes on. I say like I'm putting the brakes on this. Like it made me money, great. It worked, great. But I also discovered a lot of my faults. And here's the interesting thing. A lot of people will try and scale before they do this. The challenge with scaling, all scaling is increasing the size of something. If you
Mhm.
scale on a bad foundation, if you scale with mistakes, you're also scaling your mistakes as well.
Yeah.
You will actually grow your inefficiencies just as much as you grow the upside, you will also grow the downside as well. So instead, it's better to start plugging the downsides while you're still small enough to see all the holes before you start to expand because there'll be new holes to fill at the next level.
Yeah. Now, you and who else is part of your team? Who do you have on your team right now? Talk to me.
Yep. So just that one partner that I explained before, the guy that was a realtor up in Milwaukee,
What's his name?
and we have one assistant, Drew.
Drew. Okay. So
Yep.
you,
So it's me
Drew.
and Drew, and then we have our one assistant, Karen.
Okay. Is that a virtual assistant?
Yep, she's based out of DR, Dominican Republic.
Awesome. Awesome. And what does she kind of do for you guys? What is her role? What's your role compared to Drew's role?
Great question. So I like to say she does everything. So
Yeah.
she is our executive assistant. At this point, she does handle just about everything. So she handles like a lot of the property management headaches that I didn't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So she talks to the tenants. She coordinates with our contractors when we need things to go get fixed. She basically handles all the day to day, which I'm
Mhm.
extremely grateful for because I absolutely hated every piece of that. And unfortunately, the property management companies in our area, my partner, he's born and raised in Milwaukee. He hates every
Okay.
property management company up there. He's like, dude, like I hate all of them. They all suck. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, listen, I'm not moving to Milwaukee to ever manage properties, and I don't want to be a property manager. So our assistant's been handling a big portion of that. So she handles a lot of the admin work, a lot of the communication between contractors and tenants.
Okay. So you guys are self-managing even though you're based out of Arizona?
Yep. So
Is
yeah,
is
we
your
self
is your
manage, and
partner in Milwaukee still or no?
he's out there in Milwaukee. So he's boots on the ground. He lives in Milwaukee.
Okay.
So like when we're doing virtual flips, he would go and check on the properties. Although even that, right? This is a lesson, everybody. Unless your partner is like a contractor and wants to be a contractor, don't manage your own flips. Go and get a project manager,
Hmm.
right? Like hire a project manager. Again, we made money, but like I started to also learn that flipping properties virtually, you're babysitting contractors, you're babysitting adults. And so
Yeah.
these adults need a bigger, more responsible adult to stand over their shoulder. So
Yeah.
that's going to be your project manager and hire that project manager.
Yeah. What tips do you have, I mean, for finding that project manager or managing that? Because it's one thing to flip a house. It's a whole different beast to do this in a different state. Um, I'm starting to flip more. I'm closing on my first flip, hopefully at the end of this month. Um, but that's one thing that it has been a consistent struggle is managing these contractors, right?
Yep.
So talk to me.
I would say the biggest thing with hiring a project manager, the person doesn't necessarily need to be a contractor, but they do need to, the personality type matters. This person, one, they should be local. I don't think you should hire a virtual project manager. Your
Yeah.
project manager needs to be local and they need to have the availability to go to the job sites and open the job site and close the job site. When I say open the
Mhm.
job site, I mean they are able to show up there at least 2 or 3 times a week to say, okay, this is what we're doing. You know, everyone's meeting at the house at 8 o'clock. Go over the blueprints, go over the scope of work, and make sure that everyone understands what needs to be done for that day. Make sure material is there, things of that nature. The
Mhm.
project manager should be able to communicate well with people. This should not be someone who is emotionally unstable. They should be an emotionally stable human being that can handle multiple personality types because contractors come with a lot of different personality types. And
Yeah.
the matter of fact is contractors are a different breed of, like, these aren't your stuffy coats like sitting in suit and ties all day. These are typically the guys that, you know, finished up high school and didn't go to college, right? They're the guys that will
Yeah.
go out and grab a beer after work. They'll smoke some cigarettes. Your contractors might be high half the time on the job. Like,
Yeah.
they're good guys, but it's just a different crowd. So you've got to have someone that can communicate and connect with where the contractors are at without judging,
Yeah.
right? And preferably bilingual, because the honest truth is most of your contractors are either going to have a crew that is Spanish speaking, or some of your GCs or your plumbers or whomever may be Spanish speaking. And if you're able to have your project manager be bilingual, it will allow for ease of communication. It lets your contractors communicate in the language that they're most comfortable with. And these
Yeah.
are just little things that should be considered. Right, I got a good buddy of mine out here, Zach Keebs, who the largest flipper of homes in Arizona. He learned Spanish just to be able to speak to his contractors more regularly.
Yeah. So
You know.
is that I don't know if it is that Zach Ventures or is it
Yep.
on Instagram? Okay, it is. Okay. So you
Yeah,
know
great
him,
dude.
yeah?
Yeah, he's great. He's actually one of the reasons why I came out here, because when I had spent some time out here when I visited first time or first few times, I had him come on my podcast. I went up to his house. He has a beautiful home in the side of the mountains on Paradise Valley, like this
Jeez.
infinity pool edge. That was just like, it was just one of those things that it showed me what was possible. And one
Yeah.
of the smartest guys and one of the most kind individuals, just salt of the earth kind of people. Like, you talk to him, he makes you feel like the most important person on the planet. Phenomenal, phenomenal human.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you're making me want to move out there. It's
Bro, come on
awesome.
down.
It's awesome. I mean, like the one thing, moving from Long Island to upstate New York, right? I did notice, at least in the market I'm in, it's it's very competitive. Like in a sense where everyone keeps to themselves. You know, there's no RIA here. There's no like really strong meetups that are happening. Everyone kind of just keeps everything to themselves. They feel like it's a very small enough town where they shouldn't be sharing things. Whereas Long Island, everyone's like collaborating, and it sounds like even in Arizona, everyone's kind of collaborating and helping each other get shit done, you know?
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny because even back when I was in New York, there was
Yeah,
still like that vibe of like there was like a bit like there was two mentalities. There was like the dog eat dog mentality, and then
yeah,
there was like this small pockets of people who were willing to collaborate. And I wanted to see them come together more often. And maybe it
hmm
was just because like COVID that I felt like it wasn't happening and like the pandemic kept things shut. But that's
hmm
actually why I started doing the meetups, because I was just like, I need people to hang out with. I need friends. Like, I literally, like, I'm getting freaking lonely doing this business.
yeah,
Entrepreneurship is lonely as hell, especially when you have the capacity to work from home.
yeah.
Like, it could get real lonely just being in your bedroom all day. So Arizona is a beautiful market for collaboration is king out here.
Okay.
There are still a couple of knuckleheads who are competitive, but overall it is open. Like, you can go and walk into Steve Trang's office tomorrow and be like, "Hey, Steve, can you show me how you're running your business?" And he will just open the floodgates. Like Sean Terry, I've been able to meet. It's funny. Like, I met all the people that I've like listened to their podcast. Like, I had Trevor Mock come on from Carrot.com. I had him
Yeah.
come on the podcast. I met him out here in Arizona one day, and just a super cool dude. Just, you get to meet all of these people, and what's nice is they're just as cool in person and just as open in person as you perceive them to be through their social media.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know real estate, like someone like Steve Trang, he's like top dog, right? There's really not many other people bigger than him, and the Pace Morbys of the world. Like it doesn't get much bigger than that. And being able to speak with those guys and really understand that at the end of the day, these people are normal people like you and I. They're not doing anything crazy. And then they actually share some of the implementation tools and how they actually get that done. I think that is so powerful.
Yeah.
Now, to that point though, to someone, even like me, right? Perfect example. Everyone in this market is very to themselves. Um, I do a lot of networking and I talk with a lot of people who are in different markets, but how what would you recommend in terms of building and catering a meetup or a group of like-minded individuals? Because you do what is it? What is it? Monday morning what is it?
Yep. So we rebranded it. It used to be Morning Mindset Coffee. Now it's
Okay.
a Millionaire Mindset Community where
Okay.
we have so it's a group of entrepreneurs. We meet every morning. Well, I don't meet with them every morning anymore because like it's the time zone difference made such a
Yeah.
difference. But 7 a.m. Eastern, they're all getting together on a Zoom to just connect, collaborate, work on personal development, and then Monday evenings, I run an evening call for all of them at 5 o'clock Arizona time, so that's 8 o'clock in the evening on the East Coast, where we're diving in. Yeah, like because dude, it was like I did it for a year where I was waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, like pouring into these people.
Yeah.
Phenomenal group. I mean, like they changed my life because they would just always come back and be like, dude, they would keep inspiring me with like, hey, we're doing this now, or we're doing this, or we took this step, or now this happened, or we closed this deal. And I was like, this is just I live for personal development, especially when I get to
Yeah.
watch it in other people. So for you, as far as putting together a community and putting together a group
Yeah.
inside of your local area, what I would say is start with the concept of lead with value, right? Like you and
Mhm.
I both, we're friends with Alan Avgi,
Yeah.
back in Long Island. And Alan, one of the reasons I love the man so much, such a good guy. He always led with value. Always. Didn't matter the relationship, didn't matter who he was talking to. His thought process was always first, how can I give? And
Hmm.
so when I started hosting my meetups, it was the same thought process. I was thinking, how can I give? Because
Hmm.
I was in a place where I was starving for connection. I was starving for information. So great, can I create something that gives information and gives connection and gives like a true community to people? Because
Yeah.
it was the thing I wanted. So I was like, how can I give the thing I want?
Yeah.
It's one of my core values. Give what you want. If you want
Hmm.
value, give value. So, with that being the case, a good thing you can do is go and connect with one of your title companies that's local in the area
Yeah.
and let them know, hey, I'm thinking about doing a meetup. Would you be okay if I hosted and had people come here to the title company, to the title agency, and we host a meetup maybe like a Saturday? They'll probably say sure. And what you can do is you can begin on the spot to interview the escrow officers there and begin to walk through the process. And this way you can start to educate all the people who haven't yet done a deal, who are curious about the process, to
Yeah.
talk to an escrow officer because the escrow officer will be able to explain to them and demystify the whole process. Because at the end of the day, they're running the transaction, or
Yeah.
go and get same thing with like a real estate attorney. And so this becomes something of value add to the attendees who come,
Hmm.
and you're able to start bringing people together and you're starting to give to them first. You're pouring into them first. Or
Yeah.
something I used to do, Joe, is I used to have people come to my mom's house on Saturday and I would
Hmm.
do a round robin. I'd set up my laptop with a Mojo dialer. I'd put a list in and I'd let people practice cold calling for the very first time, making their first call to a seller, and I
That's
would just be there
incredible.
to coach them through it. And it was just like it was just a fun time. It was just random people would show up to my house and we'd go get lunch afterwards, and it just started to create a community. Like before I left New York, people started knowing me for hosting meetups, which was
Yeah.
really odd because when I went to some of like the more established RIAs and meetups that had been going on for years, like I remember I walked into Michael Pinter's meetup one time and he goes, "Hey, who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Marlon." He goes, "You're Marlon?" And I'm like, yeah, like he's like, so you're the Marlon I've been hearing about. I'm like, why are you hearing about me? Like, like,
My
and he's like,
like
you've been hosting these meetups, right? And like my name started getting out there just because all I was doing was just loving on people. I was just going in, pouring value into other people.
Yeah, that's incredible. And your reputation preceded you. Like, again, Michael Pinter, one of the biggest guys on Long Island when it comes to real estate. And, like, that's awesome. You know?
Yeah,
Uh,
it blew my mind. I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like
yeah,
at that point, I hadn't even done a deal yet.
yeah,
Like I was just still working on just keeping my own personal fire alive because I know myself. I like to have friends. I like doing things. Work isn't so bad when I'm doing it with friends.
yeah. So, Marlon, I want, before we get out of here, I want to kind of, one last point I want to talk to you about is like, as an entrepreneur, it sounds like you're a competitive guy. It sounds like you continue to push yourself to stretch yourself. Um, where's your next I guess, mountain? What's the next big thing you're climbing? Talk to me. Where I know you said it's the SOPs, but that's kind of more short term. Where are you guys really moving things? And
Yeah,
where are
so
your challenges?
yeah, great question. So right now for me, the big mountain that I'm climbing, it's like if anyone's been watching my social media, they're kind of listening to me make a new shift and a new identity change. For the last 3 years, I've been very real estate centric on my like Instagram, my YouTube, everything's been real estate, real estate, real estate.
Mhm.
Now I'm moving more into my real passion, which is personal development, high performance coaching. I'm still going to be investing in real estate. It's just not going to be the thing that I'm like screaming from the rooftops anymore.
Yeah.
Because as much as I was inspired by the Robert Kiyosaki's, the Pip Stelliks, the Pace Morbys, the Steve Trangs, I was first inspired by the Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Right, like that guy, the Tony Robbins, the Les Browns, the Eric Thomases, those people that like ultimately got me to shift my mental framework. And now that I've been in real estate for the last few years and I've been able to really come across a lot of people and build my network and help a lot of people, what I
Yeah.
find, Joe, is so many people who are in the same real estate mentorships with me, in the same programs, they have access to all the same information,
Yeah.
they aren't producing. They're not producing. They're not making money. They're not getting deals done. And when I sit down and I figure out, I'm like, what's going on? Why are you not getting the deals done? And we have a conversation. Within about 5 minutes, I see it's a mindset problem. It's a
Yeah.
personal development problem. And when I start to dive into it, I'm like, well, what books are you working on? What books are you reading? And I find they're not doing any of that stuff. I take it for granted. All right. I do this now. I've been doing this. I love doing it. So it's hard for me to imagine that other people haven't been introduced to the world of personal development. But
Yeah.
I have to remember at one point I didn't know about it either. At one point I came across a Tony Robbins video and I came across a book. I came across Think and Grow Rich and I started to have to learn this stuff. I just
Hmm.
happened to have geeked out on it and dove a little bit deeper than most people.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, over the next few years, really my goal is to be able to spread financial literacy and personal development across the US, across the world. I've already begun speaking in stages. I've
Yeah.
been fortunate enough in this last year to already speak in front of rooms of over 180 plus people to be in front of the stage, which has been an absolutely amazing experience. I've been able to speak to hundreds of people via Zoom calls, and my goal is to help 7.8 billion people change their lives personally, professionally, and financially by empowering their mindsets and connecting them to the right people. So that's the mission I'm on, and it's gonna
Yeah.
take time. It's gonna be a
Yeah.
lifelong. I'm playing the infinite game. Like I'm gonna be doing this for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
if I ever get to 7.8 billion, awesome. But that's essentially every person on the planet.
Yeah. No, and so why do you think it is that so many people don't know that? Don't know how to grow, don't know they should be learning things that necessarily they weren't taught in school. Talk to me.
It's exposure. That's all. That's my personal opinion. It's exposure.
Okay.
If we aren't exposed, see, I've learned this from communication and from sales, right? When we meet people, I don't ever judge a person. I don't ever condemn a person. I don't ever criticize a person because I understand that I am that person given all of their realities and all of their circumstances. If I was born in their house, born to their
Yeah.
family, living where they lived, taught what they were taught, I would think the way they think. I would be them.
Yeah.
So the only difference is I've been exposed to a different set of parameters, to a different set of circumstances, to some different information, and that's why I think what I think. So
Yeah.
when I come across people who don't know or who don't think like this, I just realize all it is it's a lack of exposure. So I want to share the message and I realize I'm not going to do it alone. That's why I appreciate guys like you, Joe, where you've got a voice and you've got a platform and you're getting on your platform and you're sharing this sort of message because ultimately that's how this gets out. It's as a person's listening to this podcast, as a person's listening to this audio or watching this on YouTube and they're getting value from this and they're thinking like one, I'm not alone anymore because that's what it feels like when you're the only person that thinks like this, you feel
Yeah.
like you're alone. And then you start to hear someone else and you're like, well, I'm really not alone. Other people think like me, they act like me, they talk like me, they do things, and they're successful as well. Then
Yeah.
you start to share it. You don't hold on to it for yourself. You pass it forward to the next person. You're a lighthouse and you shine a beacon, letting people know, hey, it's safe land over here, but there's rocks that you're going to crash into that you can't see. I know you think you're safe right now, but you just can't see the rocks. So I've got to shine the light. And I do that by
Yeah.
sharing the things that are valuable, sharing the things I learned. And that's why I'm so adamant about getting out and speaking and jumping on. Like when I have the opportunity to come on a podcast like this and have this kind of conversation, I am beyond grateful because you're helping me in this moment live out that dream. You're helping me move towards my mountaintop.
Yeah, and one thing I truly believe is that our education system is super outdated, and even in Outwitting the Devil, they talk about that and how the education system really isn't helping people live the life they want to live. It takes them a completely different direction. It makes them glorified slaves, right? Where they're working paycheck to paycheck. They hate their lives. And before you know it, by the time they're 65, they're like, oh, I'll take 20 years and live off Social Security. That's not enjoyable. And people are starting to wake up to that. And that's why YouTube is so beautiful. The power of books are incredible. And ultimately, I firmly believe this, that part of the wealth gap between people who are successful and people who aren't is the willingness to learn things that you weren't taught in school. And that's really where I think that gap comes from, at least. Because most of everything I've learned when it comes to real estate, YouTube,
Yep.
podcasts, whatever. I was never told about escrow in school. I was never told how to make $20,000 in a month in school. They never told me a thing about that. I learned it. I learned it from Bigger Pockets. I learned it from whatever. But that's kind of where I get fire from. Seeing someone pulling back the curtain for someone else and showing them that, like you said, this is possible. And it's a better lifestyle.
Yeah. And that's why what you're doing here with these sort of interviews and making your content, what's interesting is right now people are drowning in a sea of information. There's so much information that it's actually overwhelming most people
Yeah.
because we have access to literally everything. It's insane now how much data comes into a person each day. And when they watch a YouTube video, like when they come on and they see your content, what you're doing is you're providing context to the information.
Yeah.
You're showing them how it all pieces together, how it fits into the puzzle, and how it makes sense and how they can apply it. And that's what people are really missing. So sometimes you'll see parents or adults are saying, "Man, but these kids, they have it all. Like if I had everything that they had, it's like, well, no, it's a double-edged sword. Because if you give everything, now someone is just overwhelmed. It's like trying to take a sip of water from a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
So the context needs to be provided as well, in which case you're doing a service for everybody by doing this. And our school system is outdated. Hopefully it begins to in fact, I'm not even hopeful. I'm seeing it change, right? Like as a coach, I get to coach people. I'm literally watching it change. The marketplace is now demanding what's valuable to them because we're seeing a decline in college and we're seeing an incline in self-education. The self-education business right now is becoming a multi-billion dollar per day industry
Yeah.
because people are recognizing that they're liking the ability to go directly to a person who has done what they want to do and learn directly from them. And thanks to the internet, it's leveling the playing field and it opens up the place for that. Like I get people that come to me all the time now and I get to coach them because they're like, hey, I've seen what you've done in your business. I've seen what you've done in your life. I've seen that you were able to get clarity, you were able to get focus, and you were able to cut off the noise and move towards your goal in a what seems like a more straight line. Can you show me how to do that?
Yeah.
And people have that option now. So I think we're going to see that our education system is going to be reformed more and more so with time, just based off of the marketplace demanding it. The marketplace will vote with their money.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's more of a swamp than I would like. When it comes to, public education, not so much colleges. I think that's going to maybe take a shift, but like I firmly believe that, high school education should really lay a strong foundation to at least, what our parents, for example, they didn't necessarily need a high school degree. I mean, a college degree. If they got a high school degree, they might find themselves being successful. It's not uncommon to see someone who's 60 years old at the top of a field and all he has is a high school education. And that's not uncommon. And I firmly believe that we do need to shift back to that. And they need to teach skills that are actually, relevant. For example, like tell me why I still have no idea how to file my taxes. Tell me why, I had to like learn how to like write a check when I was writing my first check in business, like things like that, practical things were never taught. And I'm still learning it, I'm still learning like, why wasn't I taught this when I was younger? But neither here nor there. Hopefully, people like you and I, though, are able to make an impact because I think it's necessary. It's a necessary thing that's needed in the marketplace out there.
I agree, and I'll say this, right? I also believe that not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. I truly
Uh,
do believe that. And I think some people, based on personality types, like I think you and I, we have personality types that
yeah,
we would never be satisfied fully working inside the constraints of a box that someone else has made.
yeah,
It just unless that box was extremely so massive that we can never see the edges,
yeah,
right? And ultimately, most people value security more than they value the adventure, more than they value discovering the unknown.
yeah,
I come across people. In fact, my assistant, I've sat down and I've spoken with her. 'Cause I like to get to know people,
yeah,
and just kind of like, hey, what do you value? She's like, nah, I just want to know that I'm going to get paid. I want to be able to, go on vacation every now and then. Right? Like, if I start talking about more like growth and big, like that stuff's gonna freak a person out. She could get anxiety from that. Whereas me,
hmm,
I'm like, I get excited about that. I get anxiety from the idea of living Groundhog's Day,
yeah,
of doing the same thing day in and day out. And what's nice is we both need each other
yeah.
because these people are employees and these people are the ones that hire the employees.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I do get that, and that's part of the reason why, it's being more common. I have a lot of tenants, right? A lot of tenants who are applying to apartments, and one of the things I see very often, at least in this area, is it's becoming more common to go to college to go and get a government job. And the reason it's becoming more common is because what you said, security, right? Um, no one ever gets fired in the government. You could be the worst. You could be the worst employee, but you're going to keep your job because for whatever reason it's very uncommon to get fired, and same with like unions and all that. But that's like for me, it's like I wouldn't want to go work for the government, make 50K, and just be happy because I have health care, and just kind of sit there and live out the rest of my life. That doesn't work for me. I need to do a lot more than that. But hey, I get it. And some people have shifted to um, virtual work, right? That's becoming super common. And, like my girlfriend, for example, she works virtually. She's an employee. She works virtually. She can work wherever she wants, and she has security. She has healthcare. She doesn't, she could turn her laptop off at 4 o'clock when she's done with her shift, and she doesn't have to worry about it. Me, I'm freaking the hell out at 9 o'clock at night because something just happened. Um, so, I totally get that. Entrepreneurship's not for everyone, but I firmly believe whatever it is you want to do, you better achieve it, and don't just take that job and just hang tight and just ride out the rest of your life. I don't care what it is you do, just don't do that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there.
So, Marlon, last thing. What quote do you live by? Is there a quote that sticks out to you that you uh, try and remember as often as possible?
That's a good question. I don't typically have quotes memorized off my mind, but the first one that does come to mind is a quote from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich,
Okay.
which he says, although there's no positive, like negative connotation to the word, I'm trying to remember this quote. Normally it's right there on the top of my head.
Come on.
Here it is. It's persistence is to man what oxygen is, or what carbon is to steel. it makes you. Sorry, I got a call coming in from my assistant. Yeah, this is tough, man. I normally don't have quotes off the top of my head, but it's persistence is to man what carbon is to steel, in the sense that it makes you stronger, right? It makes you
Okay.
harder.
Yeah.
So the main concept for me though is like something that stays in the top of my mind is if you can stay in the fire just a little bit longer than everybody else, you will be okay. Like that's where success comes from. Success comes from, I know some people don't want to hear that, but I truly do believe that it's the ability to stay in the fire. That pressure isn't the problem. Like people are like, man, it's just too stressful. There's too much pressure. Pressure is not the problem. It's what are you doing with the pressure? Because pressure makes diamonds and pressure also bursts pipes. So
Yeah.
what are you going to do with the pressure?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. We'll end on that. Marlon, so um, before we get off here, where can people find you? How should they reach out to you? Um, Let us know.
Yeah. So first off, Joe, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, man. Like this was phenomenal. This is such a fun conversation. Like I'm having absolutely such a good time having this conversation with you right now. So I hope it's valuable to your audience. If anyone wants to connect, the best way to get a hold of me is to go on Instagram and find me at Mindset Marlon. So it's mindset, one word. Marlon spelt with an O, so Marlon if you're listening on audio. And let's connect there. From there, you can find like everything else, like my YouTube channel, everything across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's all Mindset Marlon. So
Yeah.
it's just one name to remember.
Yeah, easy. And Marlon has his link tree in his bio, which has, his mastermind in it, his YouTube channel, and everything else you need to know about him. And you're going to get a lot of value from there. Like I was looking at, he has a book list in there of books that he's read that he really valued back in 2022. So you're going to get a lot of value from there. So definitely go give him a follow. And if you want to look for my Instagram, it's at Joe dot Leun. So Joe dot Leun. On Instagram, you could shoot me a DM. More than happy to help. Again, Marlon, thank you. And we'll talk soon, man. I appreciate it. This was awesome.
Yo, Joe, thank you so much for having me, man. Appreciate you. And if anyone comes to my Instagram from this podcast, let me know. In fact, tag me and Joe on a screenshot. I would love to know what your takeaway was from. Like, I love having conversations with people. Like, let me know what your takeaway was from this episode.
Yeah. Thanks, Marlon. Take care, all right?
Later, bro.
Peace.